Yeah.
It's the longest minute of the evening.
I know.
Tick, 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 tick.
In a studio audience.
And the cheering is resounding across the.
There it is. All right. Good evening and welcome to the September 12th meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Edmund Chinesky and I am chair of the commission. Other commission members in attendance tonight are Peter Keebler, one of our alternate members, alternate member Matthew Wyken, regular member Rebecca Krupke, and vice chair Liam Reardon. From the city we have Anya Collette and Brian Scannell. This is, well, as we do not have enough regular members in attendance to meet quorum, our alternate members will both be present in the service this evening. I look forward to your participation actively. So, brief note on what we do, and then we'll get down to business, as the case may be. Firstly, we do have an addition to the published agenda tonight. Vice Chair Reardon will be doing a presentation. Actually, I'll let you say what you're doing.
So during the other business section, I'll share with you a project of my students to rehabilitate the Kenduskeag Stream Heritage Trail. And we're going to pitch that the commission members might want to get involved in some modest way.
Great.
So, the Historic Preservation Commission has two roles. First, we serve as the Bangor Center Revitalization Area Design Review Committee, designated under Section 71 of the City Ordinances, which covers review issues in the downtown and waterfront areas of Bangor. Secondly, the Commission has several responsibilities under the Historic Preservation section of City Ordinances, including issuing certificates of appropriateness for construction of or changes to buildings within the city's designated historic districts. Depending on the project's location, we may need to review the proposal under design review criteria or historic preservation criteria, struggling tonight, or both. As I stated, 5 commission members may vote and we will all be voting tonight. A design review application must receive 3 affirmative votes to be approved, and a certificate of appropriateness for historic preservation must get 4 affirmative votes to be approved. The order of the meeting will be as follows. We will call the applicants, all of you, in order that you appear on the agenda, so you'll be going first. When I call your project, I will ask you to present your application from the podium. Once you have made your presentation, we will ask for the consultant's report. As our consultant is not with us tonight, we will review that with you, or I will. We'll take any questions from commission members, and then lastly, any questions from the audience if there was any digitally or that choose to join us. Once question is completed, the commission will have a discussion of the proposal and the standards of review under which the proposal is being considered. When the discussion is complete, the commission will take action on the proposal to approve, deny, or otherwise handle it. For approval of a proposal evaluated under both design review and historic preservation criteria, the commission will make separate motions related to each type of review. It will then ask for commission members' votes, 3 final comments for applicants before the HPC. If it looks like your project will not be approved, you may choose to withdraw your application, amend your application, and then resubmit your application for a future meeting. If you disagree with the decision of the commission regarding your project, you have the right to appeal the decision to the Board of Appeals, and all projects need to be started within 6 months and completed within a year. Otherwise, a new application to the commission will need to be made and approved prior to starting your project. And on that note, first up under new business, we have a certificate of appropriateness for 208 Broadway, map lot 047-021, the Broadway Historic District. The applicant is Curtis Marsh, owner and of the John C. and Esther L. Whalen Revocable Trust. Approval requested for certificate of appropriateness to replace roof. The property is located again at map lot 047-021, the Broadway Historic District. Please come forward.
So, small point of clarification, I'm the agent for the other side,
Thank you.
property, but longtime property manager.
Could you identify yourself for the rest of us?
Curtis Marsh,
Thank you.
Marsh Property Management. They did live in the property for a long time, took very good care of it. In fact, when they bought it, it was in pretty terrible condition. We're fortunate enough to have old buildings. brought it up to stuff, but we moved to Florida a few years ago and we've managed it since. It's a fairly simple request. Basically, the roof has started leaking, and so we got bids for roofing and have requested to replace the existing 3-tab roof shingles with an architectural shingle. And I think there was one question from the review, which was, it currently has metal in some of the valleys, and our plan would be to go over that with shingles, so it's one even look.
Anything else you wish to raise? So, and I will remind commission members, so Mr. Pullum's questions were around the valleys on the roof are lined with metal. Is the intent to maintain or replace them? And so you're saying effectively we're going to be replacing them? Okay. And he also noted the roofs are an interesting combination of hipped and gabled forms with a round bay roof above an open porch. The roof shapes are one of the character-defining features of this house. The dark black color is consistent with other asphalt and slate shingled roofs in the district. Brian, did you have a roofing sample?
Yes, over here.
Yes.
Dun, 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 dun.
Show and tell. And Liam, I'll start with you if you have any questions for the applicant.
So I guess it obviously is a very striking building, and as Mike points out in his commentary, the roof line is part of what distinguishes it as such a striking building. And I guess I'm curious about those metal gutters that are fairly prominent on the existing roof, and if you gave any thought to retaining them. Maybe they're not formally called gutters, but those sort of valley metal pieces.
Yeah, so it comes down to just the materials that are used today and maintenance. Some of the leakage has been caused by them using, it's a maintenance issue.
And then, am I right, one valley I see pretty clearly on the photo that you provided. Is there also metal sheeting at the edge of some of the roof?
I don't think there is at the edge. I think there's a couple of valleys that have it.
Mm.
The shingles go right to the edge. I know what you're talking about. Some of the older buildings have like the first 2 feet or
Right.
something that are done. That's not the case in other ones.
Will you be putting metal up at the edge of the roof?
Yes, it'll have the drip edge.
Okay, what color will that be?
Green is what we picked because the trim is green.
Is it the same green as the trim?
Yes.
So one of the things that strikes me about the application is that other than the valleys, the difference is between 3-tab shingles and architectural. Is there a particular reason
So
to choose
architectural is
that?
slightly more expensive, but it's slate, and it looks so much more like slate to me, given the historic nature of the building. That architecture looks so much nicer. 3-tab doesn't have any of that
Mhm.
distinction to it, so it didn't seem to, I'm sure they did it years ago because it was cheaper,
Mhm.
but they only wanted to go with the architecture, so it didn't maintain that way.
And then it looks like the existing rain gutters feed into those metal valleys. Is your intention? to-
Well, so the whole roof, there are gutters that the whole roof, the edge drips down to, so we're keeping the gutters, there's no.
But I can see there's a vertical piece that sort of ends maybe a foot above one of those valleys
Yeah.
that would have water then.
And dumps into the middle valley, yes. But gutters is.
Do you want to take a look, just to remind
Yeah,
yourself?
I guess I'm not picturing it, I'm sorry. I took the pictures, I shouldn't see it, but.
So it's, comes down and just empties.
Right, so that would just empty on the regular roof.
Okay.
So the metal valley would be removed and it would just be,
It'd just be shingle, yep.
I don't have any other questions.
I guess we will officially open the public hearing.
I live, I guess I should come up. My name is Stephen Barron. I actually live down the street. I kind of came in for information because like Curtis here, I live in an old 150-year-old home that is gonna need a roof. I've got a few spots where it needs it. Mine still does have the slate, which 75% of them on our street do not. So it was more just kind of coming in for information to see where you guys are. And I know, speaking with code enforcement, they said that asphalt is pretty much accepted for the most part now. I'm sure there are exceptions to it. So yeah, really just more here for information.
I wonder if maybe Matt could speak to slate roofing as a,
In Mike's absence,
yeah.
unfortunately, our consultant is probably the best person to ask.
Sure.
He's not here tonight.
Well, I participate in that profession, so I don't know if I can, in this capacity, give you counsel, but they are repairable, and most of the time it is more cost effective.
Repairable is one thing for just a few weeks, but this is, obviously the slate was added second. Originally it was cedar shingles, slate was put over the cedar. And after, I don't know how many years, I'm gonna say 100 at least, they've chipped, they've split, they've moved. It's a constant battle of, like you say, maintaining it, but then with, these houses are older, require maintenance all throughout, and to chase a slate roof for years and years just to keep stopping leaks as they come, then repairing the inside when you detect the leak and this and that seems,
So I think maybe because Matt does have a bit of a conflict of
Yeah.
interest, I will say that in my experience on the commission, slate roofs are really a sort of treasured historical architectural feature.
Sure.
And if you do decide that it's just not working for your house anymore and you really feel strongly you
Right.
need to go to another direction, it would be helpful if you could sort of do some due diligence and explain to the commission
Yeah.
that you had sought a bid and looked into
Sure.
and sort of, and then we're reasonable, right?
Yeah.
We want to
Sure.
work with you
No,
and
and I know
support
the one
you.
that I actually spoke with Jeff Labrie at Code Enforcement when I saw the Waterworks building, the new,
Right.
I think it's the GAF slate line it's called. And I mean,
Yes.
honestly, unless you're really looking for it, you can't tell if that's not slate. And I would certainly want to I like to keep the look of the slate, but mine has gotten to a point where every piece is ugly. There have been patches, it doesn't match everywhere. It's more to me, beyond the leaking, it's an eyesore. And
Okay, so this is a whole different thing than what we were
It
talking about.
is, I was
Yeah, it
gonna
is.
cut in
Yeah,
and
so maybe
say
we'll
we-
finish this first,
Yeah.
and then we'll come back to
Sure.
you. Is that okay?
yeah,
Okay, let's do that.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's okay.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, stay put.
Closing the public hearing
Yes.
officially. Any further discussion regarding the proposal at hand and not slate roofs?
No, I have no further questions about it.
Then I would entertain a motion of one sort or another. We are under historic preservation guidelines, so it's a certificate of appropriateness motion.
So I'll make a motion that we approve a certificate of appropriateness for the property at 208 Broadway.
A second.
Right, I have a motion and a second. I will do a vote. Mr. Keefer.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehead.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Next item on our agenda can be you, or it
Oh,
can be
yeah.
Slate.
Yeah,
it
let's
can
do Slate.
be-
Oh, is this
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Marsh?
Is that your example? And if you'd like to return, we'll talk about Slate now.
So I just want to cut in and say, this is kind of blurring the line between talking about potential future application, which needs to be at a notice public hearing for that application.
Okay.
And we're happy to talk to you at a staff level,
Sure.
and then advise you whether to make an application on that or not in
Yeah.
the future. So just want to,
All I was going to state was what I knew the commission had done in the past, but every application is judged on its own merit.
Yeah.
So in
Give
the
us a
past, we have Rebecca has been present
Yeah.
for a slate roof, the waterworks one was one that you were here
Yeah.
for.
Give us
That was before
a
me
lot of
and
info.
Liam.
Yeah.
And we've seen at least one
I'll
slate
ask
roof, I wanna
Jeff to read
say.
for everything he's got.
And you too, like, if you, like,
Yeah.
give us tons of, like,
Yeah.
what you want for everything, just make sure, like, even if it feels
I
like a
just
lot,
want it to
keep
stop
giving us.
leaking and not have to chase another next
See,
year.
and photos are helpful, like, give us info,
Yeah.
we want material,
Mhm.
There's lots of people with resources who can help.
yes.
We
and that.
can't tell you how we would vote prior to actually having a motion.
Yeah, we need an application.
Yes.
Now, let me ask, I know you were talking about the metal, which mine has a foot or so. I know that was added later to, because the original, what we now call crown molding, was gutters that were on my house eliminated whenever. So that metal was brought over that. So I'm curious, I mean, that's also old and ugly.
So,
Would the committee be against having it come, you know, because I'm guessing most likely I'm gonna have to resheathe and stuff like that, and it would just make the most sense to come right down and like Curtis was saying,
Would that be
any
two applications?
transitions
No.
like that are potential for another week, so.
So our consultant to the commission, Mike Pullen, could probably provide some really good advice
Okay.
on,
Yes.
you know, that situation.
Yeah.
So like I said, just get in touch with us and we
Yeah.
can help you work through those things.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's gonna have to happen sooner or later.
okay, yeah,
More sooner than later, so.
yeah, we're always here for questions, so.
Yeah, okay, all right, that sounds great.
Thanks for coming in. We don't
Thank
need to
you,
be
yeah,
evasive.
I thought there'd be more of a crowd for you.
Leah, would you like to?
Thank you.
Go first?
Bye.
Sure. If that's okay.
Yeah, it's up to you.
So, there we go. So we have a little PowerPoint to talk to you about the Kenduskeag Stream Heritage Trail. I'm teaching the senior seminar course in the history department this semester, which is around the theme of public history, sort of communicating. Oh, here's one of my students. How about that?
Well, there you go.
Timing
You have a guest
is
after all. Leah.
Hey, Dylan.
everything.
Anywhere.
Coming, I'm so sorry.
I'm really glad you're here. Your timing is excellent. Why don't we, should we go to the other issue on the agenda? We'll give Dylan a chance to catch his breath.
sure.
And we'll restart.
All right.
Very good.
Well, I look forward to an update from the NAPC conference and workshop on considering priorities. I assume this one is going to be Ryan.
Yes, Brian.
So, very busy time for historic preservation. Went out to Florida. We networked with a lot of SHPOs, contractors, historians, researchers, other local governments at all population points, down from 5,000 up to San Antonio.
Wow.
It was a really good affair, and it was a good time to learn about emerging trends, what the best practices are, and, you know, just bouncing off some of our peers on how people are considering some of the more difficult issues we're seeing in the field right now. So I said really all that in the memo, and I think the next step here would be for you guys to think about what you would call the priorities and how you can best direct staff time and board time into the efforts you really want to see happening. Now, I know we attached at the comp plan, 47 and 48 are both about historic preservation. 47 is more in the lines of surveying and collecting documentation, and 48 is about public awareness and public engagement and all of those sorts of things. Now, I have a list of bunch of different things we could do that are a bunch of different considerations, be it how easy it is to implement, long-term, short-term. But I'd really like to start with just what's at the top of your mind. What are you guys thinking? What do you guys want to be doing? And we can turn this into a discussion. So if you could do anything, what are you doing?
Well, I'm mean for Anne Marie to not be here.
I know.
Yeah, really.
I guess I would like to find a way to be in contact with the owners of properties that are becoming distressed, that are historic. so that we can help them find solutions before their property falls into real distress or.
And I think that's something that we talked about, or was part of the camp presentation as well, being more proactive.
No, like an example that comes to my mind is the church
Yeah.
on the corner of Main Street in, is that Union there?
Main and Union, yeah.
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 That's falling to pieces before our eyes.
So what do you envision that looking like exactly?
That maybe we could bring the owners in and try to have like a discussion with them to see what resources they have, what their plans for the structure are. Maybe help find a way for them to get funding to preserve it. Something along those lines off the top of my head,
You think we could be more of a source for resources?
potentially.
So I know that like the homes in historic districts, I don't remember, do you guys send like, when someone buys a home in the historic district, do you send like a letter? So
Yeah.
they have, okay, I thought so.
Yeah.
So they have like an idea of like, hey, congratulations.
Yeah, we send a letter and then we send a packet with information about historic resources in the city.
I guess, and those are like new owners of those buildings.
Yeah, we get a list generated every month about sales in the historic districts, so.
I wonder if might be a good idea, because I'm sure some people have been living in these homes well past our letter writing of the packets, you know what I mean? I wonder if it would be a good idea to just touch base with some of those older people in the homes and be like, hey, congratulations, on your beautiful home. Just as a reference, we're here for you if you have any questions about upkeep, or not upkeep, because that sounds rude, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, resources.
Resources for preservation.
Yeah,
Just because like a lot of those people, I'm sure, have lived in that house for 50 years,
Like
right,
maybe
and we
Whitney
never
Park,
sent a
yeah.
letter. Yeah.
yeah. We would have to probably come up with a comprehensive list of resources. Maybe we can bring that to you as the commission and you can give us feedback on that and
That'd be cool.
we can use that.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with that. I think the biggest challenge is where are the resources to maintain these properties in this here? I mean, gosh, when you look at the cost of the replacement windows at John Pabst, it's like, wow. And obviously they're an institution, they can handle that, but having been in the position of coming to this committee as a homeowner and, the issue of, okay, yes, we appreciate the reality of what you want to do, but how do you pay for it? Where do you get the resource? Are there any options? I mean, we do believe that, all of us are here because we believe in the preservation aspect of historical properties. But I agree, is there a larger approach across essentially the city administration towards what do we do to maintain these, wonderful things that are part of the heritage of our city? And yeah, I mean, resources are very limited. And also it's interesting, they mentioned that we send a letter to people and they bought one of the houses. Do they get is there any responsibility on the part of the realtor to explain to potential buyers what is going on with this?
Most do.
What's that?
I think most do, just out of ethical reasons.
Well,
Like
one would
most
hope,
do.
one would hope, but I just
Yeah.
know if there's anything formal.
I will say, I checked the Maine state law, and that is not one of the things that must be disclosed.
Yep,
But as part of the CLG grant that we're working on, we are planning to do a course for realtors and developers about historic preservation, so
Great.
hopefully that can help with
Wow,
that
that's
aspect of it.
that's awesome.
A wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan, at the conference, was there any discussion about how to try to do outreach to historic properties that seem particularly at risk?
Of course. I mean, everyone's floating different ideas. Some people like postcards with a picture of a nice property on it, because that costs a little less than a full letter. Other places were instituting their own local most endangered list. I know you've seen that around a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things going on. A lot of social media is going on, and just general public engagement activities that people are trying to do around the nation. I know some of the Midwest countries have a really robust grant program. So some of the SHPOs there, they'll pay up to 75% of the restoration.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Things like that, every place has their own different approach, but that kind of stuff was what people are looking at nowadays.
I think one of the contributing factors to like the church in particular, I just read an article recently about, how churches are declining in membership and some of them are closing completely. So I'm sure that having declining membership means they don't have the money to keep up repair costs. And the article is, talking about ways to facilitate somebody coming in and using it for a different purpose. Like housing can be difficult in old churches, but maybe there's some other type of use, like community center. I don't know. And it,
Entertainment.
I know they're running I don't even know if there's an active
No,
congregation there.
they're not a church anymore. They haven't been for a while.
But-
they have a soup.
They have a soup kitchen, but I think that steeple is getting to the point where it's actually a danger. Or gonna quickly become a danger. So.
Brian, one of the things in your memo to us mentions creating a historic master plan. Is it been begun? Is there any draft work around it?
Yeah, of course. So there are a lot of considerations, especially long-term, short-term, and staff time. That is something we mentioned in the comp plan and something we are interested in doing. If you choose to give us that direction, we can start facilitating a longer-term.
yeah, I mean, we would have to work it into the budget. I mean, it would have to be approved by council to budget for it. But if that is a priority, we can, shoot for that long term. I will say too, to add to that, the climate plan that was just completed recommends doing a historic resilience plan. So I think it was the National Park Service came out with a manual for preservation techniques for mainly properties in flood zones. And we don't have like a huge number of properties, historic properties in flood zones, but we do have a few. And there's other climate hazards too. And so it might be worthwhile, like if we want to do a master plan to incorporate the climate resilience aspect of it.
I think that's a
That
really,
sounds-
Yeah.
Was disaster recovery, applying standards for disaster recovery zones.
Yeah.
I think the idea of a historic master plan having a structure and a direction is a really valuable
Yeah.
thing.
Top-down approach is always better than trying to fit it in little pieces around the edges as they come up
Yeah.
as issues.
Yeah, ad hoc is never
Yep.
very efficient.
And I have not looked at the comprehensive plan, so is that emailed to us as an attachment, or?
I thought we sent it to you, but we can definitely resend it to you.
If you would, it
Yeah.
probably came and I missed it, but I
Okay.
don't, see.
Were there other things in the conference that come up as priorities? And I mean, being new to this group and, don't really know what is done around the country differently than what is done here. Were there things that came up that were striking as, these are great ideas that we are simply not addressing?
Well, I mean, how long
You
do
took my
you
question.
have? We can
well,
talk all day about that.
Well, that's
why we're
part of the
here.
issue.
I know. So a lot of focus these days is on becoming legally defensible, especially with interpretations. And one thing we could consider in the long term is design review standards. So like a little guidebook on the nuances of how we want Bangor's Historic Preservation Commission to be. Because you have a lot of leniency in what you can do and what you can accept as a replacement and what you can't.
Right.
So a design guideline would just say, hey, we lean towards more traditional approaches. Hey, we lean towards more modern approaches. That's also a long-term goal. That's also a budget thing. But that is defining your interpretation and the criteria of that, so you apply it consistently. Because consistent application is really big.
Yes.
That is one thing too that I'll note. I was gonna touch on that when responding to your question about whether the last application could be a minor, because the code is open to interpretation. And it can be hard sometimes to determine, is this a minor or should it go to the full commission? In that particular case, it seemed like because they were changing the style of the roofing, it should go to you, because it wasn't gonna be complete match in appearance. So that's the kind of thing, it would be nice to have specified.
Yeah,
And the decision to come here versus not, it's the code enforcement officer that has that responsibility, or does that go through
Usually
you folks
it's,
in some way?
so really it could be any one of us. Usually the question comes to me or Brian. But if Edmund here felt that it should go to the full commission, or Brenda felt it should go to the full, Brenda and code, then we would send it to the full commission.
That's when I was chair, I often, I would, they would say, well, you look at these 3 things and see what you think. And I would
Right.
think, oh, well, these 2 seem pretty easy to just say it's a minor and I'll sign off on it. But this one, I'm not so sure. It seems a little bit more involved. And then, so I think the chair has some discretion about making those calls as well.
okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure on the process with that.
Yeah,
I was surprised when I became chair. I was not aware
Yeah.
of the minors. And then I would get these emails and be like, oh, I got to get down to City Hall and take a look at these.
but,
I
but
only had to do it when we were
the process of someone applying to have something done, then that's triaged by who decides whether it comes to you for decision as chair?
So somebody will either go to code enforcement first, or they'll go to us first,
Okay,
and we'll make an initial decision. But we send it to the chair, and
Okay.
then, yeah, chair gives advice.
And that's where something like a design guideline would come in handy,
sure.
because it
Oh,
removes
very much.
some of that.
Yeah.
And you can do that for the whole city, you can do it citywide, you could do, you were starting to see in some of the bigger cities, district-specific guidelines too. So West Hammond would be different from Broadway, because they're different places, different from the State Street mansions. So that's another thing you could think about.
So, Brian, what would the process of making these standards look like? Would you spend time developing them and then we'd vote on them? Would it be a collaborative process? How would we go about doing that?
I think a lot of that's your discretion. I know we tend to like as much public input as possible. Depending on the scope of it, we could apply for grants and get a contractor. That is something that in the field, there are a lot of contractors doing that.
Okay.
It is something we are capable of doing too, though.
Is that something you have any interest in taking on?
It would definitely, so we just started on our land use plan implementation. So that's gonna take a lot of our attention for, the next year to 2 years. But once we're kind of finished with that, maybe this is something we can look at doing. Maybe if we have a lull in the work on the land use plan, maybe we could look at that then too. I know there were some other things that we wanted to take up with the historic code at some point, so maybe we look at that within the next year. We look at more design guidelines.
Do we have a formalized process in place to validate that the work has started within 6 months and within a year?
It's in the every approval letter we send out, the timeline for,
Right. Does that get validated externally?
what do you mean exactly?
Like
So
the code
if-
enforcement officer check.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely.
So one of the things that I took out of the camp meeting was they have a certificate of completed work that goes back to the commission so that we know that something that we've moved on has been done, or not done, as the case may be.
Okay.
I don't know how
I think
much anybody would want that, but
I would love that.
I like that idea.
I like that, and I think
And-
we need to follow that.
I think it would be nice to also know when a project has been started, or if the 6 months has elapsed and it was never begun. Like we spent a couple of years ago, we spent a lot of time on a generator for the standpipe
Right.
that never materialized.
Well,
I don't-
and if it lapses, then
They
they have to come back
right.
for reapproval, so.
Question about the timing and the time frame. I mean, there are certain projects and things that could be done that would be expected to take longer than a year. Is there an opportunity does that mean that if even going in, it's gonna take longer than that the person has to come back and get reapproval in the midst of their project? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
So I have seen, so for land development, we have an ability to get an extension. I haven't checked the historic code. I would imagine we have the same thing in there. But I will note that we did also plan to bring forward at some point a change in the code to lengthen that timeline, because it did seem short. So we would make it the same as land development, which is you start within a year and then you finish within 2 years.
Mhm.
The full month for the year, you can't do anything, so.
Right.
I wonder if currently it's handled sometimes as a minor modification, that they could explain that the project was taking a longer period of time, and then the chair and city staff could sign off on that as not needing
Yeah,
to go
it'd be
for a
minor.
full review.
It'd be a minor revision.
Yeah, I think there is some thought to be, that we need some thought with that process, because so many things can take much longer than a year.
And in our current environment, if you're planning a change, something that's gonna be more than a minor situation, and you wanna know if the historic commission's gonna approve it before you put a lot of money into planning and, you get that approval, and then you're trying to set up, contractors and subcontractors otherwise to do stuff. I mean, stuff takes so long to get done.
Ordering windows can take a long time.
Just any material.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess I would just support that thought process of extending it. I think it's a little short probably for today's
Well,
realities.
on that note, and something else that came out of the jam session was other commissions are more. You could almost say they have a meeting before the meeting and then they would work with applicants on site. You have to publicize that. You have people coming, but they would go on site, so you could work with them on site to help, if you like, shape their application. But it's pre-work is the kind of, Brian, I don't remember, you heard the same thing that I heard, but that was what stuck kind of in my head was that to help, so that if the goal is to help people preserve their properties without having to go through as many hoops, like we can take a more active role in that. And I maybe something that you had heard in Florida, I know the San Antonio preservation people talk a lot about people as well as place, like they're looking for kind of a cultural preservation as much as it is architectural.
Yeah.
You have leniency.
I met some people from San Francisco, and San Francisco has cultural districts, which is something that they do, and we're seeing how it plays out. And it's really exciting. It's good. Speaking on the camp we went to, we were seeing a lot of communities do like workshops beforehand. So
Thank you, that's the way I
that's what it
needed.
was.
Yeah,
was gonna
that's
be.
the way I needed.
Some communities really like that. Some communities felt like they were putting too much time into it. So it's about striking a balance for those communities. I know in Orlando, if you have a historic preservation application, you have to either put a lawn sign on your lawn or tape a flyer on your window saying, I have this application pending this month.
Inviting public comment.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I like that, actually.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
is a reasonable idea.
Didn't we see something where, in addition to that, that people would put in, if there was work being done, they had something they could put on their building saying that it was in the process of rehabilitation as well?
Yep.
And it's been approved by the.
Right, so it wasn't just minimizing, I guess,
Well-
reporting to code enforcement that people are doing things.
Currently, if you're getting a building permit, you have to post it in a window.
Yeah,
So they have to get a building permit for anything that goes to you for a certificate of appropriateness. So they already
Have to display it.
they have to display it, yeah.
In Orlando, though, it was less procedure and more public education.
Yeah.
I would say. And another emerging trend, I guess we can talk about, historic easements. So I guess the best way to do it is an example. So if you don't want to designate a whole site or a whole property, but there's something really important, let's say you don't want to designate the whole Cross Insurance Center, but you want to designate Paul Bunyan. Historic easement is written into the deed itself saying that we are giving the city of Bangor the ability to maintain, construct, and then in exchange, the taxation is not at the behest of the Cross Insurance Center. So that's another thing. Historic easements, that's happening a lot now by private third parties, but we are seeing it with municipalities too. So. That's just another consideration. So that's going to be a legal agreement with the right to regulate changes on not entire properties. But that could create its own confusions with the code and sites we have designated and
Right.
finding a storage bank to keep all those. So it has its pros and cons like anything.
I know we've had conversation where it's come up in other commission meetings about, I don't have a better way of putting it than preservation of public spaces. I know we've had some sort of conversation about like parks.
Yeah, the pocket parks and
And
Bangor.
green spaces, is, if that's a direction that we want to explore, because I don't know how much of that is enshrined as far as historic preservation is concerned, whether that that's something that we could look at as well.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking something along those same lines is that, we have, my artifacts doing the survey of, architectural survey of the town, essentially, is maybe looking at designating other places historic or creating other districts or modifying the size and shape of districts. Is that something that we want to think about?
That's actually kind of what we're doing with the grant that we're working on. As soon as we get the RFP out, the purpose of that is to survey areas in the tree streets outside of the current historic district and areas on State Street that aren't in one, like the mansions on that street. And then also surveying parks if we have enough in the budget for that, with the thought that, we'll look at seeing whether these should go on the register list. So.
Right, if we're looking at, developing a larger overall plan, I think including public space and structures as well as private makes sense in the
Yeah.
overall scope.
Yeah.
I mean, because certainly the intent of what we're doing extends across all of that.
Yeah, definitely. So, I don't know, Brian had some other ideas listed out. That might be, besides some of these things that we've talked about for future grant opportunities, some ideas are just putting more signage up, marking historic districts and historic buildings. So,
Definitely.
I guess, because so many historic properties are held privately, could you put up a sign on private property?
well, no, I mean, we definitely have to ask them if it's okay. Like, I used to work in Beaufort, North Carolina. There were a lot of historic houses there, and I don't know what their arrangement was, but so many of those private houses had like plaques
Plaques.
outside of the house.
Yeah.
So we can look into what other communities like that have done.
Yeah, I think that might be nice. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you're on the National Historic Register, you can get a plaque from them. If we have designated local historic, shouldn't we provide, hey, we will provide you with
Oh,
a
yeah.
plaque if you would like to have on your.
Yeah,
I
we should
mean,
definitely provide it.
What's that?
We should definitely provide it.
Well, that's what I'm saying, in
Yeah.
the sense that, I mean, it creates more, I don't know if credence is the right word, but just,
Like a certificate.
a certification from the city, but hey, it's cool that you have this historic property and you want to show everybody else that you have it. Well, it's essentially a rubber stamp from the city saying, yeah, what you have has value.
Yeah.
And I think that's a way to help to get owners of historic properties or potential owners to kind of get on the wagon, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think it's a way you could, maybe spark some community engagement if you have this plaque saying, people are walking around and reading.
Yeah.
And it can be the genesis of someone's love of architecture or interest in the history of Bangor.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of merit there.
Yeah, I mean, I find Mike's talks, for example, when he was talking about the different architectural styles and, why this has significance and what significance it has. I mean, that information passed down to the homeowners and, available for them to provide to their friends or public or whatever, and either a plaque or some sort of thing. I mean, it just, to me, is always more interesting when you're walking down the street and
Yeah.
you see.
Well, and then there's walking tours. You could
Yeah,
actually have a
well,
walking tour. for
exactly.
people.
I mean, you walk down the street, you know, in Beacon Hill, it's like, okay, this is who built this house and, you know, who they were. And it just, I don't know, it creates a greater level of interest, I think. So those sorts of things to reach out and support the ownership and, you know, the excitement of what it is.
Yeah. Brian, was there anything else from the conference?
Lots of stuff, right?
We came in second place in historic preservation trivia.
Whoa!
Bangor did that.
The Queen City.
Was the answer Wilford Menzer?
Never.
Who took the crown?
Denver.
Okay.
Denver's crown. Yes.
But do you guys have any more thoughts or
So
questions?
in terms of the list of ideas of possible things to work on, is that what's in the memo that was part of our agenda?
No, no, Brian just shared this with you before the meeting, but we can send it to you.
Because I think the action requested is a workshop to discuss priorities, which I think would be great.
Yeah.
But I feel like I need to get more up to speed about the range of possibilities and, some kind of indication of the scale of some of these, not only, just the statement itself, it's not clear to me, is that, a 20-hour project, a 2,000-hour project, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
the best workshop would come with, some more robust background reading done by me, so I've had a sense of that.
Yeah, Brian just came up with some example ideas. It definitely doesn't cover everything. I think the purpose was just to get an idea if you had any other thoughts. But we can definitely send this to you as a starting place, and we can have another discussion on this.
One thing I might suggest is that, I really think the ideas of looking strategically at what this body is doing and what it's going to be pushing towards, what the future is for the work done, is as important as what we do just in seeing the applicants and everything else, or more important. And in that regard, I'm used to, in program development and things that I've done, a set schedule for strategic planning discussion. And the idea that we would then establish as part of this group an ongoing scheduled discussion to review what we're doing, look at these things on a regular basis. Again, with this concept of thinking top down, what's most important? That's what you're asking, right? And it makes sense to ask that question. So, as we move forward, having a structure that allows us to continue to look at that, I think that would be, to me, it would help me get even more excited about being involved, because they're really being able to give input into how not just we look at this, but the city and the administration of the city, right? Because that's really what we're talking about. If we are able to get support for a larger historic plan that we're talking about. I would just suggest that we can think about that as a separate sort of meeting. I don't know if the structure of the bylaws or whatever of this committee allows us to sit down,
We just have to post it.
Public.
Okay.
Yeah.
which I think would be great. But I like the idea of, say, hey, every however often, get ourselves ramped up, because, as you're saying, Liam, I'd love to look over more specific things, get thoughts and process, and then start talking practically about, what resources do we have? How much is it gonna take to do this or that? But I think that's a great discussion to have, and to have a set time where we prepare really well for it.
Yeah,
Be a
so
good thing.
let me start with sending the comprehensive plan around again, because there
That'd be
are,
great.
because there are specific strategies in there with an
Right.
estimated timeline, not like specific. But that would probably be a good place to start. And then we can kind of dive into the specifics at the next meeting.
That'd be great.
Okay.
But I think this is something that all the current commission members, we can have input on, that will help steer and kind of have us have maybe a lasting mark on future iterations of the
Right.
commission.
Oh, exactly.
And I think that is really a valuable thing.
So I think I've got a pretty good transition to do.
Yes.
Since in the memo that Brian sent, one of the items he mentions is implementing heritage trails.
Cool.
So we actually have a heritage trail in Bangor that is sort of extraordinarily dilapidated and badly in need of updating. And of course, UMaine this semester is ready to tackle some of the labor side of this. So we've got a PowerPoint, and I think Dylan can sort of walk us through it, and I
Yes.
can interject as needed.
Yeah, no, of course. Sorry, hi, everyone, my name's Dylan. I'm so sorry.
So your last name too, so part of the
Oh,
public comment, it
yeah.
goes into the record.
Sorry about that. It's been a very busy day. Hi, I'm Dylan Merchant. I'm a senior at the University of Maine Orono, part of Professor Reardon's capstone team. We have been looking to do a public project in relation to public history, and what at least the professor had kind of directed us to was to the Kenduskeag, the Kenduskeag Historic Trail. As probably many of you know, like because you are from the area or live in Bangor, the trail has been around for a good majority of everyone's lives. It's been around since the 70s, and you've probably seen some signs dotted around here and there along the river. So, and because of how many public, many public projects had occurred, it was from grants. One being LLB, which I'm very familiar with, and it's philanthropic achievements and its duties to communities, because I'm from Bath, Maine. So little tidbit for that.
So
And
just one thing I'd like to
Yes.
stress, so the trail itself was built in the 70s, I think related to the bicentennial and kind of putting money
Yeah.
into local
Yeah.
projects. But the interpretive signage wasn't added till almost 25, 30 years later.
After.
Oh, wow.
So that came with this LLB
Did-
grant. And Mike actually worked on the original interpretive trail.
Oh, really?
So,
Am
yeah.
I Polish?
Yeah.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
It's not everything.
He's so
Of course he did.
Yeah. Just trying to get everything, did the footbridge, the covered footbridge, did that go down in the 80s or when was that burned? Does anyone remember?
That's
You know
how
that's
that's
why
how we
it's
need
like-
Mike here.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I remember you had said something, it was like in the 60s, but it
Pretty
might
sure that if we go back to
Yeah,
those
You
black
can
and
see it in
white
the
photos.
picture, that's what struck me, I'm like.
It's very striking
Oh,
to
yeah.
those of us who never knew that covered
Right.
bridge.
Yeah, I didn't know.
That's where the pedestrian bridge is
And I
now.
know there was arson.
Oh.
and
I think it was the
It
80s.
was
I think it was the 80s.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it was,
it's
but
terrible.
we didn't get signage on that trail until you said,
Right,
2000.
until the next slide gives that.
wow.
2005 was the grant, and then I think 2008 was like the official opening of the trail.
That's,
So the sign on the right is the one, there are 9, there were 10 of these concrete forms with the case and signage on top.
and we will get to that in a couple of slides from there. So, as you can see, like there's a rudimentary map, like from Google, displaying the actual trail going from like just about like the outer edge of the edge of city limits right over to the riverside. And you can see that image towards the right, where it's like this sort of like best example of what the signs look like along the trail.
So there are 2 of these larger signs on double posts. One is down by the Sea Dog, underneath the overpass, so it's actually been protected from the weather. It's in relatively good shape. The other one is what's called Gateway Park, which is
Oh.
sort of just beyond Harlow Street, just beyond Gene Deegan's, that little park.
oh, with the
Yeah.
picnic
Oh,
table.
And so
yes.
that,
Yeah,
right,
okay.
next to that picnic table is another one of these double signs. That one is not weathered so well, because it's a little more exposed.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, yes, so for the next one, kind of brings all this information together as to why I'm here today, why my capstone group is taking interest in this, is because for us as historians, who are wanting to engage with the public and wanting to bring forth information or putting out information so that community members can see it and consume it and learn just a little bit more about their local history, is that there have been instances where there have been signs that have been damaged, or in this case, as you can see towards the right, being destroyed.
Right.
Now, it was very interesting because it was last week on Friday, we were coming to, I'm so sorry, I forget the
Cultural Commission.
the Cultural Commission. We were leaving to the Cultural Commission and we passed by what was the remnants of a sign. Now, as Professor Reardon had explained at the time, there was a sign that was fixed onto that cement block. Now, you would think, it's like, you can't like jimmy it off or
Right.
break it or something like that. As you can see to the left, these are metal signs, they have metal, like the actual sign is made out of metal, so is the framing, and I think there is supposed to be like a sort of like glass or plexiglass that's covering it. Yeah, that was just ripped off.
Wow.
The entire sign was just ripped off, and it's still, I think, contested as to what happened, whether it's like by accident or is intentional. All it was that the sign was just ripped off.
And then
From the
replaced
pedestal.
there? Like it
I'm
was
sorry?
ripped off the post
It
and
was
then just.
ripped off.
I don't think we know where the, it's
Oh,
They
so
were
it's
throwing
like-
it in the
oh, I thought that
Yeah,
you were, I
it's
thought you were
true.
saying like they ripped it
ripped
off
off
and
and
then put it
gone.
No, yeah, like
Right.
like this breaking off. We don't like,
Ah.
at least in terms of details for what he explained after that, like, I don't think neither of us really know.
No.
Wait,
I have been in touch, so this is Bangor Parks and Rec, ownership.
That's good.
And so I've been in touch with Tracy Willett, and his feeling is that the cases, all of the cases are in such bad shape that probably the best way forward is to demo the existing cases and just to use the concrete to affix metal signage that would go on top. So the dimensions there are the current case size, and it's possible the ones we would aim to produce would be a little bit smaller, like they might overhang the concrete platform just a little bit, but obviously if it hangs off too far, it'll just be more easy to damage, so.
Yeah, I agree with that.
so, yes, thank you. Well, is also like part of the fact was that like we have an interest in like revitalizing the actual like trail. The other part of it is that it's sort of a reconciliation of parts of history that have been not addressed properly in a certain way, and I think many of you know what I'm going to be referring to on this slide, the Esteban Gomez Memorial, which was affixed in the 70s or 80s, and it was gifted from, now see this is where the details escape me, but it was gifted from another community, not in Maine, I think it was Massachusetts, and it was received. But then it was around the time of December 2020 when like their the history surrounding it now, and many of you are not familiar with it, or at least to those who's watching this meeting in future time. Esteban Gomez was a very infamous figure. He was responsible for the capturing and enslavement of, I think, 16 Native Americans, Micmac, I'm pretty sure, but please don't quote me on that. And that is why, given the fact that he had a sort of memorial placed in his honor, which is very strange to say given what he had done, when the history had been sort of being more vocalized during this time, and it was, I think at the time, like the city council, like the actual city council's decision to remove it, and ever since it has happened, the pedestal has been there, and nothing has been done to do anything about it, and that's why, at least us as like Capstone Group, we want to bring in this conversation again of how can we take this space and use it to address what had happened, not in a negative way, but more in a way of just like to bring this up and say, this is what's happened, but we can move on and grow from this. And rather just having as a dark stain on our past. It is a dark stain, but it should be used as a lesson.
I agree.
To be taught and not shunned or censored from our history books.
I agree.
So
I think
the
it's an
former memorial,
opportunity for continued conversation.
the memorial site was removed in December 2020, and
Yes.
the cross figure is on the grounds of Bangor Historical
Exactly.
Society.
Yeah.
And once they're done with their fence and portico
It'll
project,
be
they
on the wall.
intend to do some kind of installation, but for the time being, it's still just wrapped up at Bangor Historical. But the first of these interpretive trail signs is on this grassy area adjacent to the former memorial. So it seems like
Oh.
that would be an appropriate place to explain something about perhaps this memorial or something
History,
else having
yeah.
to do with Wabanaki history of this place.
And I will at least like just add on just what you had said earlier, at least us as a group, we are interested in like consulting with the Wabanaki Nation and the specific groups in particular that were affected by this. And we're hoping to like make sure to add them into this conversation and see what would do best for this type of scenario and how they can be able to help us in terms of support academically at least. So we're not we're aiming to make sure that like all sides and all perspectives like in relation to this are being heard and met with to the highest responsibility. I'm sorry, I don't think that's the right word, but we would go fast. Our due diligence.
Yes.
Probably better. Anyway, so moving back to the actual trail, you can see, and I think, is this the sign that we saw earlier that was graffitied, or is that a different sign?
This is further upstream.
Further upstream, okay. Well, anyways, so, this is one example of the sign that we would be possibly working with, which is the quote-unquote Indian Regatta, but you had explained it earlier, Professor, that it's the boat race that occurred along the Kentuskeg, but I forget the actual like the significance of it, aside from just sports entertainment, I think.
Well, I think, so everyone here who lives in
Yeah.
Bangor is familiar with the Kentucky Canoe Race as like the biggest civic event of the year in the city. And there's a record of an Indian regatta on the Kentuskeg on July 4th, 1865, the
That's
first July 4th after the end of the Civil War. And it's a sort of extraordinary, so this, John Martin was a Bangor shopkeeper who lived in Little City, and he has like a 1,200-page sketchbook and diary that has all been digitized and you can access online, so we give you the little URL there to track it down. And here he's got this sketch and description, and this is a mill building, if you could really zoom in, he's got like people sitting on the crown of the roof to watch the Indian Regatta.
That's cool.
Names the paddlers who are going down the river.
Wow.
So sort of one example, there's an existing sign about the Kentuskeg Canoe Race, but it has, 4 photos of contemporary paddlers.
Right.
Here would be a chance to just revise it and
provide
add a little
context.
historical depth, and also
Yeah.
again to connect to a Wabanaki
Oh, that's
use of the place.
fascinating.
Yeah, you wonder, yeah.
Huh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
And then I think, just to like tie this all back together, I think the last slide is in relation to our actual projects. Ooh, technical difficulties. There we go. Okay, so, I talked to you about what we're doing. I talked to you, like just a little bit about the trail's history, its controversies, its possible aid, all things like that. So I know what you're thinking. Why is this guy here? Why is he talking about this? What is he, because like usually like people who are like up on this podium are gonna be asking for something, and we are asking for something, but not a lot. So I hope you stick with me on this. So, we have a number of public events that me and my cohorts are gonna be a part of, just raising awareness and getting public input about this type of project that we'll be working on. And at least on behalf of my group, I came to just bring up some possible events that maybe any of you could attend and show support get a conversation going, just like the general public, and just show general support. I think our big events that we're really looking forward to at least is the Arctober award event, which is gonna be, I mean, you already know, but it's like in the morning to around 3-ish.
The October 1 award event is at Chimera Coffee, and this is the Cultural Commission is sort of doing an October kickoff, and I think it's gonna name a great
Artist of the Year.
Artist of the Year, thank you. And they've agreed that our class could have a table to start to do some public solicitation of if the trail gets revised, what sort of things should be in it. And like we're trying to come up with a bunch of bowls that people could drop
Right.
tickets into
Yeah.
or write their own comment or something like that. So I think that's like a 5:30 or 6 o'clock event, just, do you know if
It's
it's
3
up there?
o'clock, actually.
Oh, is it 3?
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
3
so it's a relatively
Yeah.
short in
That would be great if people would go to that.
Chimera Coffee. So that's our first.
Yes. The next one, which I think is at least very, very huge, is the Maine Archives and Museums Conference. It's like a very big event where historians and archivists from all over the state, I'm very much sure, will be coming to Lewiston and sharing their ideas, sharing their findings, and we will actually be speaking towards the middle part or the beginning part of it. I think we're just gonna be opening up at 11. So that's a very big thing. It also will be very interesting for all of you guys because you're the Historical Commission, and I know that I may not be sure of how, if the Historical Society is under your jurisdiction, but attending such an event like this can really bring ideas forward to the table, and sharing that back with the Historical Society would be beneficial if it was needed. And then there's some other events. The Bangor Sidewalk Art Festival will also be having a table as well. And there's also a good chance if you just shown your support at October and you come by again, just like for a little bit, not as much, I also implore you to come by and support our local UMaine students, because there will be at least a couple of them coming by and showing off their artwork, and will be, I think it's by commission, like they're selling it, or?
They should be.
Okay, so yeah, support your local artists,
Yes.
attending university.
And I think October 5th is an event that the HPC could think about beginning to have a higher public profile and sort of doing some outreach.
Yeah.
And so Betsy London, this is a downtown Bangor partnership,
Yeah,
Bangor
downtown partnership.
partnership event. And Betsy Lundy is sort of, is the executive director of that, is organizing it. So we'll have a table there for the Heritage Trail, and we're hoping that a Cultural Commission member and a Historic Preservation Commission member would be there too, and we could kind of be talking about the different sorts of things that we do. It is an all-day
I'm
event.
all 3, so I'm an
You're all
artist
3, yeah.
and historical.
It's an all-day event, so I'm hoping, my students will probably stagger some time, and maybe we might think about doing something similar.
Yeah, and I promise I'm almost finished. But then there's the last couple of ones. We'll be having a field trip to the Zillin Art Museum, just gauging ideas about what we'll be doing for actual projects. And I will, if any of you are interested, I can mention like what my aspirations are for a project. And then the last one is our final presentations. And I'm so sorry, don't know
Bangor
what
Public
the deal is.
Library.
It's Bangor Public Library, yes. So we'll be having our final presentations on our individual work. I think also group work, if that happens. Okay, cool. So both of our works. And that will just be at the time, it's 4:30 to 6. So I'm really hoping that all of you could come. I'm really especially excited for this because for my initial project, and I have done some more ideas, but at least the subject matter I am wanting to lean into. So for my individual project, I'm wanting to work with the Charlie Howard section of Bangor history. I was told, at least by Professor Reardon, to get in touch with Unity Universal Church and just work on something just to bring more traction behind Charlie Howard's history and his memory, because I feel like there are students, at least on university campus, that have not known about what had happened on our tragic nights, and I feel that there should be more reflection and brought attention to this. And I think the only time I really heard about this was Wildsteiners. I don't know if any of you have been part of Wildsteins or have any connections with it. They did a night of remembrance in reflection of him. So yeah, I'm hoping to at least continue on with that. And Wildsteins especially, they've had done other public events. I think they celebrated their 50th anniversary for being the second oldest gay straight alliance club in US history. First one is from Wisconsin, apparently. Little fun fact for you guys. But anyways, that is enough about my project. So yeah, that is the conclusion of my presentation. Does anyone have questions at all? Any clarifications, concerns? I mean, of course, you can direct that to Professor Reardon, but try to ask me first. I might know some things, I promise.
So I have a comment, and this for both Liam and you, Dylan, that you were talking about including the the Wabanaki people in with the signage, and my partner works for Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness, which is a tribal public health district for the state of Maine, and they are working on a cultural trail that follows a similar path through downtown to the Kenduskeag. So you might reach out to them because there would either be potential collaboration or synergy in this project, and it could maybe become something larger and more inclusive. So I think it'd be worth investigating.
Of course. May you repeat the name just?
Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness. They have their headquarters right downtown in the old Epic Sports Building.
Now, is this in any connection with the Wabanaki Health and Folks?
I don't think so.
Okay. Just had to make sure, so I'm making proper.
I think they're coming up together because Folks was assisted with a ground mural that was close by.
All right.
So when you're going to all the places that you've mentioned, you have the tables and stuff, what are you looking for from the public? Feedback on what to put on the signs, or just that you're gonna have the signs, or what?
So this is a big emphasis of public history, that historians should not squirrel themselves away in an archive and do the research and then tell people what they need to know. That there should be a more collaborative process of trying to find out, well, what is important to you about Bangor history, or what could we emphasize is.
Yeah, what do you want?
So that's what, I think that's partly what the slide says for public input, to
Okay.
try to, this is like a great example, right? We didn't know about the Wabanaki plans for a cultural trail. So when you have these kinds of discussions and proposals and get out there a little bit more, you discover, there are all sorts of ways we could work together more effectively, so.
To build off of that, if I'm permitted to speak.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay, as what Professor Reardon had mentioned, it takes me back to a little reading from class, and it kind of helps with emphasizing, the argument of our goals and wishes to see public interest, because history is basically about us, and if historians, from being in this academic point of view of this certain upbringing and these kinds of things, right? If there is no public engagement, or at least any interaction to any sort of level, they aren't exactly writing history for people. It's more like writing history just as they sort of see it, if that makes any sense. Not saying that, historians who are just reclusive and, scrolling themselves into an archivist and not talking to anyone, like some comic book character from some TV show, right? That isn't the case, but I think it's really important that, anyone, even if it's, any sort of profession, discussions are important and warranted for these types of things, so that everyone's perspective, no matter how small, can have a voice or at least a part, like a piece of the table
Yeah.
to.
Part of the
include
story.
that. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
The narrative.
So you're gonna, in theory, or you're gonna be creating new signage. Where's the funding for the signage coming from?
It's an excellent question. I do think that Ann Krieg and I have been talking about this for quite a while, and I do think that part of the comprehensive plan might have designated this as a priority.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
we're not exactly sure of, this will take a while and it all needs to get vetted, but I think that the city might have some funds to contribute.
Oh, that'd be a very nice update. And I hope it can go kind of with a larger rehabilitation of that trail.
Yeah. Jill, you did a great job. Really appreciate you coming down.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thank you for
actually
coming.
coming.
Yeah, no, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Yeah.
Whole story, but just didn't think I would have time, but I had time, so I decided to come.
Yay.
So,
I'm glad you did.
Perfect.
Had the
Thank
perfect
you.
entrance time.
what?
You had the perfect entrance time. You were right on cue.
Yeah, it really was.
Wow, thank you so much.
I actually have a thought, I mean, we want some ideas about your signage here. What you just described is the concept of making these signs smaller.
Yeah,
And of course, the challenge then is, what do you do to edit content, or what content do you put on there? In which, in our day and age, anybody reading something, it's not really what people do so much anymore. So my question would be, is there an option for interactive, I don't know how all this stuff works, QR codes or other things, to say more information about just, look at this. I mean, everybody carries their phone around, everybody's looking up things all the time, and you're standing right there, you got a little interest, and just, be able to go learn about the Wabanaki influence, or whatever the things. I mean, to me, it gives it an opportunity to build a much more in-depth story from an historical perspective that then can reach out to people more. So I just, thought of, you probably already thought that, but.
Yeah, the first
Yeah.
step on the ladder.
Yeah, so I think, at least in terms of your question, no, not your question, your comments.
Yeah.
There have been displayed interest in looking at sort of the digitization of it. I think, at least as a group, because I don't want to make any sort of comments, at least on behalf of them. But we definitely take suggestions, we definitely take any sort of ideas into the whole of it and make sure, we take ideas and we take any sort of comments or suggestions into consideration to complete the best form of what people would want. So at least me personally, just as an idea, or at least something that could possibly happen, is a combination of the two. A brief blurb with a couple of pictures, and then a QR code for anyone who is actually interested in it to look forward, to look into it in their own personal time. Because on one hand, I can at least not saying of anything of the sort, but people being on their phones and checking stuff up all the time. I can very much see that, and people want to be more interested in nature, and then it's almost like a habit, you pull up your phone and you're checking things around. So at least me personally, that could be it could be a combination of those two, of physical and digital.
Yeah.
If you could link to that regatta, or the journals of, I forget the fellow
Yeah.
that published them, that would be a wonderful resource.
so it just so happens there are 9 students in the class and 9 concrete pedestals.
Oh
So-
my gosh, isn't that handy?
So hopefully no one drops the class. But so the students will all have sort of primary responsibility for individual signs.
Nice.
And then they also have a second public history project to do. And so I think the thought there is that, best practice in signage is short and sweet and visually
Yes.
compelling.
Yes.
Sure.
But then there would be some kind of link that might go to a podcast, a video, or
Right.
digital site, to Wabanaki Public Health,
Yeah.
all sorts of
Yeah, that's fantastic.
possibilities.
Cool. Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it takes me back a little bit because which I don't know if it would, would be of a surprise, but I've done my Eagle Scout project. It was actually on a sign, for my track and field team. So it really takes me back to like the whole process of
That's
planning
cool.
Yeah,
and the amount of work. I mean, of course, what is very different, and I'm very glad of it, it was during COVID.
Oh.
So, yeah, for anyone who does public projects, or I mean, if any of you have done that, I commend you, because it was not fun at all. Yeah, it took me until like the last day before it was due, but I did it, so. Alright, but, I know like you guys have been silent, just taking it all in. Not to put you on the spot, but do you have any questions, comments? I know I was listening, sorry. I was listening in about like your projects, and I wanted to see if you had any sort of thoughts, suggestions. I have my phone. I know it's like kind of counterintuitive because I was talking about like, non-digitization, like physical digitization, whatever, but like I do notes. So, anything at all?
Well, just to
Yeah.
clarify, we're staff, not
Yeah.
commission, but yeah, I don't at this point. I think we were gonna meet with Anne about this, more in depth. But I think, this is really just to get the commission's feel for the whole project, so,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Ryan, any Heritage Trail advice from the conference?
Ooh, we didn't really talk about Heritage Trail. I mean, I'll also stew on this. My degree is in history. And I finished my Eagle Scout project with 3 days left.
Nice.
But yeah, we'll keep talking about it at a staff level.
Thank you.
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, if there is no more further
That's
comments.
exciting.
Off the hook, Dylan. Thanks a lot. You did a
That
great
was
job.
Had to make sure, I don't want to leave anyone hanging.
No, that's great. You did good.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks,
Yes.
Dylan.
Thanks.
Officially, one meeting for Ann and Mike with us.
Right.
I know.
Really?
I know.
Really?
All the people that missed.
Mike is actually coming to campus next week to meet with my class.
Oh,
excellent.
We'll get him.
Oh.
We'll get him even if he tries to hide
Reel
from the
him in.
commission, so.
That would be great for everyone involved.
Yeah.
As the only remaining business on the agenda is the minutes, if there's no revisions or questions about those, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 8th meeting.
Second.
Peter?
Approved.
Aye. Thank you, and I will also vote aye. By the power vested in me, you are free to go.